Welcome back to the official Beast Lab. Today I have the single season Division I Faceoff record holder, Mike Sisselberger. He's a Faceoff Academy coach, the current Faceoff man at Lehigh University. Sis, welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's an honor because I know a lot of big dogs are on here, so I'm hoping I can hold up my end.
I'll tell you right now, you want to talk about big dogs, you go to Sisselberger's Instagram handle and you can see, what's the back squat record right now?
Back squat record out of the Lehigh gym is 615. Inside the Lehigh gym is 575.
Okay.
Yeah, it's different there. Definitely in my powerlifting gym, got some great spotters. And at Lehigh, it's just they're not as big, just to say the least.
I wouldn't expect them to be. So, Sis, you're basically, so people at home know, you're basically a Lehigh Valley legend at this point. You grew up in the area. You're at the school now, an All-American. And as you and I have discussed before, like, you would love to stay in that area post-grad, coach there, do your thing. What makes your area and you just growing up in Lehigh Valley kind of special for you as a lacrosse player and an athlete?
So that's actually a really good question. And I actually don't get it as much as I'd hope. But Lehigh Valley, one word to describe it, is just gritty. Like, you don't really think of top tier lacrosse when you think the Lehigh Valley. You think of some sports, but maybe that's football, maybe that's wrestling. But people have really been on the come up, just training so hard because you get Philly as a hotbed, Maryland as a hotbed, New York as a hotbed. And these are all hour and a half at max 2-hour drives from the Lehigh Valley. So you get kids who want to get really good. They end up driving to Philly, driving to Maryland, driving to New York. What my dad did for me when I was growing up, drove me to all these places. And it's just like a perfect training ground in between to be the best athlete that you can be. And I think it's kind of coming to light now because you got some studs, young studs like Matt Baracco. He made Team USA. I think it was the U19 or U16 division. You got Russell Fitzgerald. He's more of a Philly guy, but you just get all these beasts. And there's a lot of names I'm missing, and I'm sorry about that, guys. But you just get a lot of underlooked guys that come to the Lehigh Valley that I think are now coming to the light. And I think that I was one of the, I'm going to say, founding fathers. I don't know. That's just a funny term. Founding fathers of people who kind of ventured out and was able to find new avenues for kids outside of Lehigh Valley and kind of get better from there. So I think everybody now is knowing that Lehigh Valley is getting big.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I think what your plan, you and I have had discussions, your plan from a face-off coaching perspective would do for Lehigh Valley what I kind of did with Westchester, New York, where we had guys coming out of, the Yorktowns and Mamaroneck and Rye. They had like attackmen or midfielders going D1. Face-offs weren't really a huge thing here. And now it's become almost a just absolute machine. We're pumping out D1 talent every year out of this area. And it's not because they weren't here already. It's just they needed someone to show up and give them a blueprint and be like, here's all the same stuff that the Philly kids and the Long Island guys and the Baltimore guys are getting. Here's, I'm going to provide it for you. And then you get to see that athletic talent really shine. And I feel like what you're saying is you could just be the catalyst for that area and do the same thing for these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I really look forward to doing that. And I hope people can, I don't know what the word would be, respect me, I guess, as much as they respect you. So that's why I've kind of been training really hard so people can listen to what I'm saying, being a FaceOff Academy coach, being I like to think, lifting coach, because it's something I also have a passion for. So I can train them in both ways. And I think that it's a great preparation for success, being face-off training and lifting training, and that coming together, being a superb athlete overall.
Totally agree with that. And let's dive more into that. So for me, coming up, graduated Penn State in 06. I didn't go to Penn State because I loved the lacrosse team. I went to Penn State because it was my dream school and I wanted to study kinesiology. And when I graduated, when I got into the pros in 2006 and 7, I was looked at as this weird, meathead. Because in lacrosse, it wasn't common to train like a safety or a linebacker, which is what I shot for when I was at Penn State. Now, in this day and age, I'm very proud to say that it's considered a very standard part of our sport, strength and conditioning. For you, what turned you onto it at what age? And then why did the powerlifting portion of it really turn you on as you became a college athlete?
So I honestly love that question because I think a lot of people are going to be surprised. I mean, growing up, obviously coming seeing you, I was kind of like a more heavy set kid, as you can probably attest to. And like I was big bone. I wasn't like a fat kid. but it looked like I was lifting. It looked like at a young age I was lifting. But honestly, I didn't start lifting until sophomore year of college. And it kind of just blew up from there, as you guys can see, kind of like making headway. But I don't know. I guess getting into it, the first time I took pre-workout, it was just like a feeling that I never really understood before. And I was just, because I've always been an energetic guy, and I took it and I was just like dialed in, wanted to work out, wanted to get better. And I guess that's like a horrible reason to start working out just because of the pre-workout. But I don't know. It was just fun for me. And ever since then, I enjoyed what I was doing. And I've had great coaches along the way. I mean, you've met Maggie Faulkner, who's Ironstone Barbell right down the street from me. She is a superb lifting coach, lifting everything. She trained me for a good year. When COVID hit, she actually had me in her personal gym. And we maintained guidelines. And it was just me and her training. And then as I come back to Lehigh, I grew closer with my strength coach, actually, because training with Maggie got me stronger. And then going into Lehigh and getting to talk about what I learned really over the COVID period, training in that aspect with my strength coach, I guess swapping ideas, and it just really blew up from there. So I guess the real answer would be COVID. COVID, when we really couldn't go anywhere, there wasn't much to do. I was like, you know what? I never really got seriously into lifting. So why don't I try it? Because I have access to an awesome gym. And yeah, I guess that's about it. I don't know if I answered the question fully, but.
No, you did, because I think, you know, that old adage that adversity reveals character, doesn't build it. I feel like COVID did that. And I was just talking about this with my neighbor the other day of when COVID happened, you really found out who was who and who was missing like what in their lives during COVID, because you saw some people kind of like emerge from their houses and they looked awful. And then you had other people who looked like they were a 2.0 version. Like for me, I built this whole garage and I was like, let's get to work. Like I'm a retired lacrosse player now and I'm not going to sit around and get old. And I feel like for you, it gave you an opportunity to start lifting and taking it seriously. And it's funny because what pre-workout did you take? Because I'm sure people back home want to know that.
So I took JYM. It's the only NCAA legal one I could find. It was great, but I'm going to be honest, I had to take now I have to take like 2 scoops of it, because the first scoop when I was first getting started was awesome. I felt a little tingle, felt a little caffeine in there, but now it's just like I've seen some other stuff, and it's really doesn't hold a candle to that crazy stuff out there.
Well, there's a reason for that, and that's why that stuff is illegal. But that's a good brand, and people trying to find out, like, is it NCAA legal? That used to drive Brad Pantal, our strength coach at Penn State, nuts. And it started to drive me nuts when I became a strength coach in New York City in the private sector, because all you're trying to do is get your clients or your athletes to be healthy. And, you know, I would come rolling into the gym to see Brad, and I'd be like, at 5 a.m., I'd be like, this stuff's called dark rage. And he'd be like, he'd look at it and he'd be like, you cannot take this. Like, you'll fail a P test and you'll die. So if you want to know if something's legal, if you're a kid in high school or college, just look at the side of it. You should have informed choice, green check on it. If you're not sure, just go to your coach, go to your nutritionist and ask them. They'll be able to tell you. There's a huge list that the NCAA has of legal substances. But you're right, there's a lot of stuff. Basically, if you look at something and it says proprietary blend on the side of the bottle and there's a bunch of crosses, just stay away from that aisle. Get away from that aisle as quickly as you can. Angie Benson and I talked about Advocare. That's why I loved Advocare, because Advocare, everything is informed choice, so it was clean. But the second question I want to ask you is, you got into lifting a little later, but I also think there's something to be said for that, because I used to think that I got into lifting early. Right? Like, I started lifting summer before freshman year. My dad told me if I cleaned out our basement that he would put a gym pack down there for me, and I became obsessed with lifting. But I didn't know anything. You know, you read Men's Health and you're like, I know everything there is about working out. I read one article by Chad Waterbury. Then you find out by the time you get to college and you're throwing up in a bucket after every lift that you know nothing. So technically, most guys start training when they're in college because they're getting informed information. They were just working out when they were in high school. Do you think that your ability, knock on wood so far, to stave off injury, to feel healthy and be able to put up this kind of weight right now, has a lot more to do with the fact that you were just an athlete before. You weren't putting yourself through all the bad rigors that a lot of us did when we learned how to lift incorrectly in high school. And now your foundation is more solid while you're trying to lift heavyweight now.
So I think that there comes two parts with that. I think the first part is definitely the later start than most people, because obviously it's science. Your joints wear down. It happens. It's a natural thing in your body. But I think the great coaching that I've had to stay away from injury, to stretch beforehand, to roll out after, to do exercises that not necessarily put your body in the risk of having certain injuries. Because, it's a face-off guy. I like to focus on more face-off specific stuff, a lot of joint mobility, like elbow stuff, like knee drive, leg drive. And you're really susceptible to a lot of injury there. Elbow tendonitis is huge. Like, I'm starting to feel it a little bit. I mean, you get some in your knee. Your shoulder is a big thing too, especially if someone's raking you a lot during the season, which happened last year. It kind of throws out your shoulder if someone's hitting you with a fish hook or something. But I guess the two main focal points there would be starting later, definitely kept my joints and muscles in a great place and a good foundation to start, but also the great training in Eric Marcosi here at Lehigh and Maggie Faulkner over at Ironstone both set me up for perfection there, because they just had all the correct workouts and nothing that was going to put my body in harm's way.
Yeah, and it's a great point. And I think, obviously the coaching is super important. I think your body having enough tread on its tires. I talk about that, since I've been coaching you when you were in high school, I talk to you guys about how you take too many live reps during the week. Our bodies, unlike every other lacrosse player on the field, we only do one motion repetitively. Our bodies aren't designed to do it. But the worst part is we're going against impact of another person. So your labrum can only take so much. And I tell guys, if you're starting to get this, burn here, you're starting to get the elbow tendonitis, that is a flat out obvious indicator that you're just taking too many live reps. So I think a lot of time, I know it's not as popular from a coaching standpoint, but you try to focus mostly on the technique, and guys don't want to do that. They want to just take reps. But we do have only so much tread on our tire. And I think that when you talk about understanding the biomechanics is the important thing. I spoke to Jay Dyer about this, about how when we are learning to lift, a lot of times we're learning exercises. And one of the things that turned me off about a specific certification when I was getting into the private sector, which I won't mention the certification, I hated the fact that the book was all about exercises. None of it had to do with biomechanics. None of it had to do with movement planes at all. And, my thing is, if you're going to get into the gym and start bench pressing, you damn well better be able to do solid, perfect push-ups. Andrew Apt and I spoke about it. Same thing with, can you do a body weight squat? Can you do a goblet squat before you load the bar? And I think if you have those biomechanics solid, when you do introduce weight and an external load, you see the muscle show up in a second. And even more importantly, the core is solid. So for you, give us an example. You're in the off season, like this past year, you just came off of an NCAA record-breaking year. You finish up the season, you start to prepare for your off season. What does your off season look like from a strength training perspective?
So I just wanted to touch on one of your points, and I think you brought up one of the great ones, functional strength. And a lot of that's so underlooked, because you can put weight on the bar and you could struggle. I don't know if this is a video or podcast. I don't know how it's going to work, but you can struggle to get it up and drive with your hips, but that's not form. That's going to hurt you in the long run. And yeah, you got the weight up, but it's not going to do anything for you. So in the off season, I guess, so took like a week or two off right at the end of May, because at the end of a season, a lot of people know it, probably going to listen to this. You're just shot. Like, your body after that whole season, it's been through a lot. So you have to rest. Rest is important. I'd say take 1 week off, take 2 weeks off, and then you get into working your way back up again. So I came back into my gym over at Ironstone Barbell, and I could barely bench 350 pounds. And coming into the season in December, I could bench 405. And I was like, all right, well, that's good and bad. As you get into the season, I guess we'll do like a timeline. So you start in the season and you do more functional strength weight, which is body weight stuff, lighter weight for higher reps, focusing on speed. And that's more important at the end of the day than being able to bench a heavier set in your bench and squat than having the the less weight. So we did that. We did less weight, more reps. And I think that was really important in the season. Off season comes around. kind of just working my way back up into what I did. So went from 350, 365, 385, 395 to 405. The workouts that I did specifically, I can't say I remember them exactly, but it was mainly kind of just working my way back up, knowing that I didn't have to play in a season until the fall or play in a game until the fall. So I wanted to get that strength back. I wanted to focus on face-offs, having more of a drive. And I don't know, I gained some weight, I guess. I left the season at like 205, came back in the fall at like an unhealthy 230, but I was just really strong.
Jerry Raganese told me you walked into the gym in the fall and he hadn't seen you in a while, and he literally laughed out loud at you because he said you were like walking sideways through doorways.
It was definitely a rough point in time, and I don't think I'm ever going to get that big again, but it was cool. It was cool to have the numbers there, but
we've all been through it.
I don't know. Yeah, it's cool. Like, I mean, you look at Tyler Sandoval, he's looking awesome, and he has to walk through doors sideways now. So I wonder how much he's weighing.
Yeah, remember that name, because that name's going to pop up a lot the next couple of years.
Yeah, he is a beast, and he actually is really into lifting. So, yeah, if you want to have him on the podcast, you should. But I don't know. To answer the question, I really don't know. I guess coming into it, off-season training, I don't remember exactly what I did, but it's just through the training of my coaches.
It's all right. I can help Maggie and find out for sure. Essentially the cycle that I used to go through, I would break my year up into 4 mesocycles. And you have your in-season, like what you said, is more functional training. And I think a lot of times the strength training world has a concept that works scientifically based and it's given a name. And then the fitness world screws it up, right? So strength training, the idea of functional strength is to train for your function. It's that simple. Somehow in the fitness world, functional training became jump on a Bosu ball, do one-handed, one-legged balance stuff, but anything but weight, right? So when we have to reiterate what functional strength is, for you and for me, functional strength, at least when I was training, in season was about greasing the groove, keeping your joints healthy, keeping your mobility, recovering from the beatings we took, especially during the knee down motorcycle days when you were grinding the hell out of people and every face-off was 45 seconds. Postseason, you throw your stick in a closet for 2 weeks and you recover. You just go for like walks every day. And then when you're ready to lift again, you start building. And like you said, you lose weight throughout the year, right? You lose weight if you're doing it right? You're kind of losing weight throughout the year. And then you start to build it back up. Now it's about recovery. And then you get into the fall. And that's when it's big dog time. Now it's time to put up your size, your strength, get as big and strong as you can. Then you get to the preseason. Now it's about cutting your weight, getting fast, making sure that you're lean going into the season and you're ready to go. So that was easy because as a lacrosse player, that broke my year up for me. And I think a lot of people who are listening to this who don't play sports are like, how do I break my year up? I can't just do a linear progression of load every day because at some point I'm going to plateau and I'm going to get frustrated. So how do I break my day up? When I was a strength coach, I used the 4 mesocycle concept and I used conjugate periodization. So I would have my clients, I'd be like, what's your goal? Like this time of year, I would be doing a test out from all my Brawlic athletes. That was my company. And we would do a test out. And at the beginning of the year, I'd say, here are your numbers. What's your goal for this year? And usually the goal for people who aren't athletes, or even some athletes, is usually aesthetic, right? I want a 6-pack, or I want bigger arms. So my goal as a trainer was to write a program that would then make you focus on the numbers. So when you, after a few months, you look in the mirror and you're getting what you want aesthetically because you're focusing on this. So when you are training, I know for me, I wanted to win more face-offs. I wanted to be faster and better in the fourth quarter. That was always my goal. So my goal was power, explosiveness on the whistle because nervous system reaction helps you on the whistle. And then also mobility and flexibility to stave off injury with my joints. So for you, when you're lifting, what are you focusing on? What gets you going? Because you said their numbers are different inside the box than they are outside the box, right? And there's a reason for that. Go ahead and describe to me what that reason is. What gets you going?
So, like, what drives me?
Yeah.
Is that what? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that drives me, honestly. Like, I personally am kind of sick in the head because I could go 29 of 30 in a game, and I will focus on that one face-off loss probably more than I focused on those 29 wins. I mean, and I love it, right? It's a gift and a curse because you're a competitor, and that's what drives a lot of people, and that's what helps a lot of people be great. But at the same time, it's tough because there's days in practice. Like I think Allen Iverson was talking about. We're talking about practice. Like it doesn't matter. It's what gets you ready for the game. But like there's days in practice where you don't have a good day, and that'll eat at me for probably a good 1 or 2 days, and that's not helping you get better for the game time. And it's tough being a competitor. And I know a lot of people listening to this will relate, but just like a quick tip of advice to somebody, like just let it go because there's a way to get better, and it's what practice is for. But what drives me is kind of how underlooked I was coming out of high school, and not even in the sense like I was an underlooked ranked player, but just you have a phenomenal player in Connor Gaffney at Lehigh. A lot of people are like, yeah, he's not going to get any time till what? He's maybe a junior, senior. So I come in freshman year, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows the story. And I honestly just focus on face-offs. I could care less about school. I just wanted to start so bad because all of the words and rumors behind me saying I'm not going to start over Connor Gaffney, who, like I said, is one of the best people I know, phenomenal player, one of the smartest people I know. But I think that was my own downfall in being a competitor, right? Because you have to learn how to balance things. And obviously was not able to play freshman year just because I took lacrosse way too seriously. And I mean, lacrosse is life, and I think it's awesome, but you have to have a balance in life because school is important too, friendship's important, family's important. And I think that's where I lost myself was freshman year, kind of just focusing on one thing, putting all my eggs in one basket. And, you know, it's great and all because you become really good at one thing, but I mean, you can see obviously it didn't work out because you have to be good at school too, apparently in college. And yeah, they don't let you play if you're not. So the next year, I guess after freshman year, got a great training year with Connor, got to practice with him every day. But I mean, the year after, it was game on. It was like, look, I grew not only as a lacrosse player, but I'd like to say I grew as a man because I learned how to balance things, and I found the importance in like being good at multiple things. And the fact that you're good at one thing can actually get you better at another thing. So being better at school helped me organize my time better to practice and play lacrosse and lift. And then honestly, my college career has been a real, I don't know if we can curse, shit show. Because sophomore year, I got to play 5 games. Season gets canceled because COVID. Couldn't play a freshman year. So at this point, I haven't even used a year of eligibility. So I come in my junior year, which was last year, and I'm sure a lot of people know, and find out Connor Gaffney's coming back for a 5th year. And I was like, look, I love the guy, but there comes a point in a man's life where you have to nut up and just either outwork somebody or they're going to outwork you. So I decided to work really, really hard, especially because the new rule change. I think that benefited me because it was a clean slate for everybody. You could have been a first-team All-American, and you could end up being an honorable mention just because of this whole new rule change, no matter how good you were at the old thing. So I took it and I ran with it. Ended up training really hard with obviously Jerry and you and John Bodner over at PFL and a bunch of guys from the Philly area. We all just got together. And I kind of related it to something else I want to touch on was wrestling. And I was a huge wrestler growing up. And I actually, I don't know if many people know it, joined the Lehigh wrestling team this year. So coming 2022, come to a Lehigh University match and maybe you'll get to see me compete. But I related it to wrestling. It's more stand-up. You're in a stance, you're crouching down, and it's more explosion. And I just really clinged onto it and had a really fun time doing it. And I think that's the most important thing is having fun while you're doing something. So I guess what drives me is everybody that said I couldn't, because I love to hear that, especially now, because I just look at them and laugh. And I lost a lot of friends over it because there was a lot of people in my life, friends from high school, that told me maybe this wasn't for me and like not in a respectful way. So at the end of the day, it's people who told me that that I couldn't do something. That's what drives me.
Yeah, prove people wrong. And I think most of my entire life was about proving people wrong. It wasn't until I realized that it was more about proving the small group of people that did believe in me right, which was actually what motivated me the most, and I got the most enjoyment out of it. Because when I was focusing on, like you said, you go 29 for 30, right? I'm in the airport after a game. I lost 2 face-offs, and I'm watching the film already, and I'm obsessed, and I'm writing my notes down. And I used to tell people after all my games, I'd come home, I would watch the entire game over again. I would take all the notes on every single face-off, where I put the ball, what I did incorrectly, how I lined up wrong, what I could do better. I would write out all the notes. I would read them. I would throw the notes out, and I'd go to bed at like 4 in the morning. And I did that every night after all of my MLL games. I'm not recommending anyone does that. But in my head was the same thing. And I think that's why you and I get along so well, because I'm a Philly guy. I didn't go to a private high school. I went from a public school to a school that I loved, that I just wanted to go to because my family went there. I didn't have a whole bunch of guys to put my arm around as alumni when I was in the MLL. Plus I was a face-off guy. So I was the outlier. I was the weird guy. And I lost a lot of people along the way as well, because I just felt like you're either rowing with me or you're an anchor. There's really no in between. And if I have 5 people in a boat rowing with me, that's a much better life than 45 anchors that are hanging around. So I commend you on that. I also commend you on the fact that you're a wrestler as well, because the reason I gave up wrestling was because of making weight, and I couldn't do it anymore. I loved wrestling, but I hated having to make weight. And I'll get you out of here on this. How do you balance? Because there's a lot of wrestlers / face-off guys that are going to listen to this. How do you balance those two things?
Honestly, it's more of an enjoyment thing. So I quit wrestling my high school career because making weight. So my dad and my whole family, I had 2 uncles in the Olympics for wrestling, and they were crazy about wrestling. And the story I'll get to is with my dad. So growing up 12, 13 years old, I had to put a sauna suit on and go run the local rail trail up and back until I made weight. And I'm like, look, at 12, 13 years old, this isn't life for a 12, 13-year-old. You're supposed to enjoy it. It's not that serious. And at the time, it was that serious for me. But looking back on it, that's why I quit in high school. And I loved it. I had a passion for it. But there comes a point where you have to enjoy it. And I distinctly remember after our one championship youth football game, everybody had a pizza party. And my dad, wrestling season was just after football, as many people know. My dad brings me a cup of soup, and that's all I could have during the pizza party. And that's kind of like the tipping point for me. And it was just broth, really. It was broth and like 3 pieces of chicken. I wouldn't even call it soup. And I was just like so mentally drained at that point. But as I got older, it really made me realize discipline and just what makes you enjoy something. So I hated it at that time, but I thank my dad for that. Just for the ability to, at a young age, like be disciplined. Like how many kids are going to be eating soup at a pizza party at 12, 13 years old? Like it takes discipline. But I don't know, just finding something you enjoy. And I really enjoy face-offs and I really enjoy wrestling. That's what makes it all worth it. And the ability to do both now in college is a dream come true, because I'm not going and throwing a trash bag on and running the local rail trail. I'm having fun with my friends, whether that's facing off or whether that's in the room on the mat and just like playing around with them. And I don't know, I guess if I could tell a young athlete one thing or 2 things, I guess I'd say listen to your parents for the first one. And the second one, just be enjoy what you do. And if you don't enjoy it, take a little break and you'll eventually find your way back to what you enjoy. And that's what happened to me.
No, and you'll see that is a very surprising parallel to Scotty Rogers when he talked about having to make weight and his dad kind of doing the same thing on Halloween, which if you haven't seen the Scotty Rogers video, you have to watch it. But what I took away from this is it's very similar to, I hated reading when I was in high school and college. 5 years after I graduated college, I started reading because I enjoyed it, and I read every day. And I read everything from biomechanics textbooks to sci-fi novels, doesn't matter. But it's because no one's telling me to do it. It's intrinsic. So there's a big difference between your dad telling you have to run with a trash bag on in order to make weight, and you deciding on your own, this is something I really want, and I'm willing to go do it. The other thing is, you'll notice in this VOD, when you guys start reading through these, all the accomplished people that I'm talking to, the number one common denominator is discipline. When the passion, the motivation, the energy is not there, it always comes back to discipline for successful people. And you prove that even though it was a little tough when you were younger, you're grateful for the ability to have that discipline now, and that's why you're where you are right now.
Exactly. I actually couldn't have said it better myself, and you saying that makes it sound a lot better than me telling a pizza story. But I honestly couldn't have said it better myself, and I just really appreciate the opportunity that I've had, and just thank God every day for the abilities.
Well, that's awesome, Mike. I wanted to thank you, man, for being on here. There's a lot of guys that look up to you for a very good reason. Do me a favor and let people know where they can find you on social and otherwise.
Okay, yeah. So I don't have a Twitter. I have an Instagram. It's just at Mike Sis. That's about all. I got. I got Instagram.
Yeah, he's got Instagram. He also is one of the coaches for the FaceOff Academy, and you can follow him, his clinics in the Lehigh Valley at FOAPA, or is it FOAPA? And then on the FaceOffAcademy.com, you can look at his information as well under staff. Mike Sisselberger, the all-time record face-off wins leader. I want to thank you so much for coming on here, man. And good luck both with wrestling and this season in lacrosse, brother.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's always great to talk to you, Beast.
Thanks a lot. Guys, thanks a lot for listening. If you are on the VOD and you're a subscriber right now, scroll down. We got a lot of guests on here that you guys are going to love. I want to thanks a lot. Thanks for making it official. Take care, brother.